Perfect segue to Max Olson, theathletic.com, who wrote about West Virginia. A nice surprise in the Big 12, and they've had a chip on their shoulder since Big 12 media days when the poll came out. Max joins us, and we had Neil Brad on, and he brought that up. He was upset about the colors behind him, even with the players' breakout session. Max, what a nice story. There's always a story or two in the Big 12, maybe every conference. Baylor 2 years ago, last year TCU. Is West Virginia, you think, that team this year?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it reminded me, honestly, a lot. The working on that piece, talking to Neil Brown and his players for that story, it did remind me a lot in some ways of the stories I was writing about Kansas a year ago, right? Where I think that sometimes that's kind of that's tough for us in the prognostication business, especially now that Kansas is better. It's hard for us to kind of just assume who's the worst team in the Big 12 anymore, right? And so, I think, certainly the summer poll was wrong about West Virginia, and it didn't really make sense when you think about it. I mean, they shouldn't be behind all four of the new schools. That just doesn't make sense. But certainly that's exactly what they needed. That motivation of being 14th is something they've carried with them every day since. And, I think it's done them a lot of good. It's funny that this West Virginia team is not blowing anybody out. They're just winning close games finally. And that's, as you guys know, that's what it takes to actually be competitive in the Big 12 race, is just find a way to survive and advance in some tight games. And, it hasn't been very sexy. And I think there's still a lot of room to improve, especially on offense. They really have not gotten things clicking on offense yet. Now Garrett Green's healthy, but, certainly I think that's a team that in the run they've had now, beating Pitt, beating Texas Tech, beating TCU, I think it shows that there's a lot of toughness there, and I think it's with the way the schedule sets up. No Texas, no K-State, no Kansas on the schedule. They've got a chance here to rip off a bunch of wins.
Max, what is your opinion of Oklahoma after that big win last week?
Yeah, not surprised by the national conversation changing around Oklahoma quite a bit. I think you could tell people were just kind of skeptical, and maybe that's because of the strength of schedule or lack thereof. But, that was just such an impressive performance by Brent Venables and his crew. You knew they were deeply motivated after last year's Red River game. But I think it just goes to show that is a coach who is just like at West Virginia. That's a coach who has surrounded himself with players who have his kind of attitude. And, we've talked about it before, how, what a good job Venables has done kind of flipping that roster, which you wouldn't think you'd need to coming in after Lincoln Riley. But I think that he has built a team that can compete for sure. And, are they a playoff team? I don't know. We'll see. They've got to kind of maintain this run and stay healthy and stuff. But certainly they made the statement they needed to make a week ago and find a way to win in the final minute, that this team's for real.
Does it really change how you feel about Texas at all, Max, the way that game went? I mean, there they had the lead with a little over a minute to go. Both these teams can still play each other again in Arlington. I think that's probably what most people expect at this point. Like you said, they got to handle their business, but does it change the big picture, that result at all?
I don't think so. I think Texas played pretty well in that game. And, if you get a stop on the final drive there, everyone's talking about Texas like maybe they're the number one team in the country or at least, top two, top three. So, I think what that game came down to, certainly they did a really good job of moving the ball in Oklahoma. It's just not very good situational football, not being able to punch in touchdowns in the red zone, getting stopped on fourth downs. Same story as their game against Alabama a year ago. I think it's a slim margin of error in a big game like that. And certainly third down, fourth down in the red zone, they've got to be a little bit better. And, I think Stark is probably right in saying, if that's the worst we're going to be this year, then we're really good. I think that, certainly Texas, they lose the mulligan there in terms of the race, but I wouldn't knock them too far down the ballot. I think they showed they're just as talented as Oklahoma.
How good and how we knew how good he was in high school, but there's hundreds of running backs who were good in high school. But Jonathan Brooks, it doesn't mean you forgot about Bijan or Roshan Johnson. Those guys were amazing. But he really has just exploded onto the scene. Great player at Hallettsville High School. Yeah,
and it's kind of cliche to say these days, but credit to him for sticking around because he was behind some really talented players. You could see flashes from Jonathan Brooks when he'd get a chance to carry the ball, in the fourth quarter of games that they put away, or second half of blowouts and stuff like that. You saw him make plays last year. And so it's not shocking that this kid can make people miss. And, he's one of the top rushers in the country this year in terms of yardage. But yeah, real impressive player who clearly learned a lot from two studs in front of him. And, that's a talented room too. When you bring in CJ Baxter and some of the guys they have around him, I think that pushed him to get even better this year. And, that balance that they found in the run game, I think has surprised a lot of people.
Max, we've spent all week talking about Baylor. We're on the kind of inside of it, but from an outsider's perspective, 30,000-foot view, how does Dave Aranda turn this around?
I'm going to be honest with you guys. I got a lot of texts from people this week saying, "What did Mac Rhodes say about the offense?" That definitely resonated like outside of Waco.
Where did you hear that?
I can't say, but I saw some people a little bit surprised by that. I think that, what can you say? There's nothing I can really come up with that's better than how y'all have probably dissected it at this point. But yeah, certainly that's one of those games, especially that stings when it happens against Joey McGuire. And, I think that Baylor's just kind of got a pretty rough road ahead here, honestly. And look, you can definitely make the argument that they've got some good young talent in this program, and that those guys just need to develop. And there's some guys that I think are on the way up that will be good. But offensively, it's certainly not very scary right now. And I think you look at the rest of the schedule here, I think Baylor's kind of going to become one of those games that other teams are circling as like pretty winnable at this point. So where's the fight? Where's the fire from these guys? It's easy to get into the X's and O's of like what needs to get fixed, what they need to execute better, but really want to see them like kind of show up with an attitude.
Yeah, it's hard to see them making the postseason, Max. But the other thing about what you just said and part of the conversation is, hey, Caden Jenkins looks like a heck of a player. Like the secondary looks like they could be really good, but it's the NIL era. Like they might have coaches in their DMs already, right? That are already saying like, "Hey, man, right. That all going on underground." But that's the thing is, you can't even bank on having those guys for 3-4 years to build on, right?
I'm guessing they're probably having people look at their commit list too, and kind of offer some of those guys and kind of start after those guys too. Yeah, I think that's true. And what is the NIL approach there? You guys would know better than I do, but I mean, I think that they're in a pretty tough spot right now. And, I don't think that, like, I'm glad Chapin's back, right? I mean, Chapin's good this week.
Yeah, they have the open week, and he's going to be able to, he played the last couple and has played well. It's not him. He's not the issue at all by any means.
Right, I know. That's usually that's like, we got nobody there, and that's kind of when you see some of these Big 12 teams think. Getting him back, I think, has been that's a positive. But yeah, you've got to find, this is that kind of time of the year where you get a break, you get a chance to get healthy and stuff. But man, we got to find out, like, do these guys have some leaders and some people who can kind of drag them out of the hole here?
Do you think that's a launching point for Tech? I mean, they won a couple games in a row now. When you're just kind of scanning the Big 12, do you feel like maybe they're a team that's starting to get something going, or was that just a product of, hey, it's Baylor's not very good this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think kind of for Tech more bum luck than anything early on here. If they beat Oregon, we'd certainly be viewing Tech very differently, and they almost did. I think that certainly you ask coaches around the conference, like, they definitely recognize Baron Morton's legit and is going to be a really good quarterback. And so I think investing in his development this year is going to end up being a good thing. And the better he plays, the better they're going to play. And so, I think that that's a team that still has a lot of really good pieces. You saw Steve Linton finally pop this last week. I think that Tech is still going to be a factor in this race, and probably has a chance here to win some important ones.
Max, thank you. How was what's your road trip? Where were you eating food somewhere?
You know what? I was at my brother's wedding over the weekend, and I missed all of the games last weekend. It was insane.
Oh, boy. All right.
Great time.
Well, congratulations to him.
Thank you.
I think Paul would give up a body part, right, to be able to take that role with him.
Look, I've offered Max, like, look, when you go to certain places, like, I'll be the tour guide. Like, I've offered him Paul Ahassi, so.
if we hit Tallahassee season 2, you'll be getting the call. Don't worry.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Thank you, Max.
All right. Thanks, guys.
No, go ahead.